super fun stuff.
If you watched my previous video, you know that I'm working on a miniature 3D printed hurdy-gurdy, which I call the Mini Giddy. I was in process of printing it out and it's finally done. Now the hard part, putting it together. The Mini Giddy consists of 46 parts, so let's go over what the parts are. First, there are a few non-3D printed parts, like these guitar pegs and springs. Since there needs to be a certain amount of tension, there was no way around this. Underneath those you see the keys that push the strings in to change the tones. Next we have the main body parts, the top and the bottom, then the various supports for the body, some of which will hold the rod and wheel. Next the key box that holds the keys, then the rod and wheel themselves, the head, the crank, the handle, the long neck, and the guitar strings. The strings that I show you here aren't the ones I end up with. I played around and decided to go with larger strings for a lower sound. So that's a lot of parts. So let's put them together. First, the body. The body consists of supports. The middle supports need to be in specific order. As you can see here, I have the bottom of the body in the correct order of the supports. The first will support the neck. The next is a blank one, then after that there's a support that helps hold the rod in place. Then a support that also acts as the bridge, after that the support that holds the strings, and lastly a final end support for where the rod meets the crank. Please note before when you glue anything, do a dry fitting and make sure all the parts fit. I had some excess filament on certain parts that need to be trimmed and need to be done before I glue them in. Now I go through and start gluing the supports down from the front to the back. I start with the neck support and the first two side supports. After this dries, we move to the neck supports. But wait, most of these supports hold the rod and wheel and need to be pre-assembled before gluing them down. The wheel and the rod can be first created by inserting the rod into the wheel. This should be a snug fit. The wheel and the rod both need to be sanded smoothly so they can spin freely. The outside of the wheel is the part that hits the strings, so smoother the better. Now let's see all the supports with the rod and wheel. You can line them up in the order and see how they fit. The rod should spin easily in all the parts. Again, I dry fit these parts to see how they fit before I commit gluing them. When I'm ready, I glue the rod end cap on to make sure the rod won't fall off the support. I doubt it would, but that's just a precaution. Then I put a dab of glue on each support area on the body bottom. I take my assembly that is together and place them each in their corresponding place. Beware that the glue sometimes dries pretty fast. I glue the last of the side supports and my bottom with the supports is done. Now it's time for the top. I put the top on slightly, fitting the string and the bridge piece in. I add glue to each of the support areas and connect the top. I push everything together and go around the body and make sure every support is in their proper place. The neck is glued on, connecting to the front support and the top of the body. I add a really good amount of glue to the top and make sure this is super stable. This holds the tension of the strings. I take the two sides of the key box and the keys and test fit them into the top of the body around the neck. I make sure that the keys go in and out easily. Once ready, I add glue to the small grooves and glue in the key box. I leave the keys in to keep the shape and make sure it gets glued in the right place. I glue in the side supports to the box that will retain the square shape and adds more support. The keys themselves have a lot of pieces. They have small tangents, the push button heads, and the stop caps. The small end of the key is for the stop caps, and the big end is for the heads. I glue the stop caps on first and ensure that they hit the key box flat. It is very important to wait for the stop caps to be fully dry and solid before proceeding. In the meantime, I glue the head on the neck and use a good amount of glue to put them together. Again, while waiting, I put together my crank assembly. The handle fits in the hole of the crank and is held with a pin. No glue is needed for this part, and it should be a tight fit. The handle should spin freely in the crank. I attach the crank to the end of the rod. Again, I don't use glue as it should fit tightly. I test the crank by spinning it, which should also turn the rod and wheel. The bridge was originally designed to be used with an adjustable screw. However, I found that the tension of the strings were too much for it. So instead, I use toothpicks to adjust the height. When the head is dry, I start to add my pegs. The peg should fit in the 2 holes with a threaded cap holding it in place. There are 2 small set screws that you need to line up. I tighten the pegs with the small wrench. Now the pegs are very tight against each other. They fit but leave no room for error. Screw in the small set screws so the pegs don't rotate when you turn them. When the key stops are dry, you can add the heads and tangents. First, do the tangents. They should slip right in and be a tight fit. I don't glue them in case I want to remove them or change them. The heads will also use a spring. Put the spring over the end of the key first, then glue the head on. This will allow the keys to go back to the original position after pressing. You now have the Mini Giddy completely assembled. If you're like me, you glued your fingers together a couple times, sanded your fingerprints away, and got a little frustrated. But that's to be expected. Now we go to the next difficult part of stringing/tuning. The string should slip right through the holes at the bottom of the Gurdy, up to the pegs. If the holes are too small, you can always drill them out slightly, but be careful not to make them too big. Put the strings through the pegs and turn the peg to tighten the string. The string should be near the tangents but not touching them. Your strings should have some tension but aren't tuned yet. Now take some rosin and put it all over the wheel. This will make a mess, but it gives the wheel the right amount of friction needed to rub against the strings. Now tighten the strings and adjust the bridge by adding or removing toothpicks. This is where it can be a little complicated and frustrating. You need to find the right amount of string tension and bridge height. It's kind of a trial and error, but a guitar tuner can help you out. After it's all done, you can add the key box cover and try it out. The keys should move in and out, the wheel should spin, and the Mini Giddy should make some noise. It may not be the best sounding Gurdy in the world, but it works, it can be played, and most importantly, it teaches you how a hurdy-gurdy works. I hope you enjoyed the Mini Giddy adventure, and I hope you make your own. The model is for sale on the Super Fun Stuff My Mini Factory 3D model store.